As one of the most accomplished legal minds this country and indeed the West Indies has ever produced, Tajmool Hosein is peerless. He has served and continues to serve the nation and the region at the highest legal levels for over 6 decades and counting. Born in 1921, Tajmool Hosein entered politics in 1961. Independence was nigh, and he responded to a request to serve his country in the halls of Parliament.
We were on the eve of independence, and Rudranath Kapildeo, who was a lecturer at the University of London, came down here and was about to take over the leadership of the DLP. And he said he was going to stand for membership of the House, and he was going to try to form a new government. And he came to see me at my office, which was then at Queen Street. One day I knew him very well. I hadn't seen him for quite a while, and he told me about his plans, and he asked me whether I would consider running for a seat. Under normal circumstances I would have said no, but I thought that he was making a tremendous sacrifice, and the least I could do was to support him and accept. So I accepted there and then without any hesitation to run for a seat in the elections of 1961, the parliamentary elections. I was never a member of the DLP before, and I didn't formally join it, but I accepted that, and by virtue of my acceptance I assumed that I had something, I would have had to do something with the party as well.
As a parliamentarian, Tajmool Hosein was instrumental in debating and amending this country's constitution.
Independence, as you know, started on the 31st of August 1962. So we had between the elections in 1961 to prepare to go to London. So there was the draft constitution which was tabled in Parliament, and being a specialist in this area when I did my legal degree and so on, I was able to guide the party and to make a contribution to the debate and the election. We did not manage to secure too many changes in Trinidad. So we went to London with the constitution as it existed, the draft constitution, and the government, I think, produced 1 or 2 drafts. And at the London conference at Marlborough House, I was one of the delegates. So I played a lead role on behalf of the opposition.
Regarding the Bill of Rights, he was especially displeased with the lack of recourse afforded the public if their rights were infringed. He argued this point and won, a fact that still can be seen today.
The Bill of Rights that went from Trinidad suffered from one major defect, that it was merely a declaratory Bill of Rights indicating that people had this right, right to life, right to property, etc., etc. But there was no method of enforcing it. Now the pattern that was introduced in Jamaica before and in the African countries contained enforcement provisions like what we have today. So I brought that to the attention of the legal people particularly, and said that even if this Bill of Rights is to be adopted, we must be able to enforce it. Otherwise people will not be able to go to court if their rights are interfered with. And they agreed with that, and we amended the Bill of Rights in that important respect by providing detailed provisions for enforcement. So thereafter, since 1962, we have been able to go to court, and you see how many constitutional cases we have had since then. People go to court if their rights are infringed.
This contribution would be his most important as a parliamentarian, as he was not interested in a career in party politics.
I felt that I had done what I really wanted to do. I had made a contribution to the Constitution, which was my most important goal, and I had made a contribution to whatever legislation had come before the House. I had done my part in my own way. I didn't involve myself too much in party matters where you had a lot of cussing off between the leadership of the opposition and Parliament. It was a bitter time. Dr. Williams at Kapildeo was there, and then Kapildeo eventually went back to London after a year or so. He was given leave to go and continue his lectureship in London by Dr. Williams, which was a very good political thing to do, because the leader was taken away from the people. And then thereafter we had struggle for leadership in the party between Sinanan and Stephen Maraj, Ashford Sinanan. So the party was broken up as a result of that. And we felt that we had been betrayed by Kapildeo, because he came here on the understanding that he was going to take part in local politics, at least for a period of 5 years, but one can understand his frustration. He would stay here and do nothing, and his career in England would have come to an end.
Among his other important accomplishments was helping to establish the major daily newspaper, the Trinidad Express. He eventually would be honored for 30 years of service to the company.
We started this newspaper in the 50s. Vernon, we felt that the Guardian was the only newspaper here, and a group of us, including Vernon Charles, myself, Gatcliffe later on became, and Knox became later on involved. But we got together with Chocolingo, who used to run a paper, and we decided to try to form a company, which we did, and we bought a press. A lot of people made contributions. We established the press, and we called it the Trinidad Express newspaper. The newspaper did very well. As a second newspaper, everybody welcomed it, and it did quite well from the very beginning. We never made a loss.
Dedication, a fine mind, an eye for detail, and an insistence on thorough research and timeliness led Tajmool to tremendous scholastic accomplishment and unparalleled success as an attorney. Numerous accolades bear testament to his many achievements. Appointed Queen's Counsel twice over, awarded this nation's highest honor, the Trinity Cross, and an honorary doctorate from the University of the West Indies, Mr. Hosein also is featured in the British publication Lifetime of Achievement 100 for his incredible body of work.
Trinity Cross in 1982 was awarded to me for my legal contribution to the state. In addition to practicing in Trinidad, I had practiced quite a lot in many of the small islands. Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia particularly, and some of the others. And in St. Lucia, I made a very important contribution, I think, because I was able to get the airport released. Where the Huonora airport was, it was leased to a Yankee for a small sum, I think, of £10,000 a year. And he had a long lease on it, and he wouldn't give it up. So I had to find a way to get rid of this lease, and eventually I found a way. It was by which we were able to terminate the lease and to pay some limited compensation. It also concerned the Soufriere Springs and all that, the acquisition of the Soufriere Springs, and where they developed the harbor down at what part of the island, or all the land acquisition cases. They didn't have lawyers with experience, so I went over there with a local valuer, and we did all these cases for them. So they themselves offered me appointed me a Queen's Counsel. They gave me a QC as a result of that.
He's been a very accomplished man too. You may not know, I don't know if you got this of him, but he's been chairman of a number of companies, you know, home construction, the Express, you name it, and not only the chairman, but he's on a number of boards. He was on Scotia, the Bank of Nova Scotia, the board there for many, many years. You know, so his services and his advice and so on was sought not only in the law, but in the corporate world, you know. So he's a well-rounded and a tremendous person, and one worth emulating.
Professor Selwyn Ryan has described him as one of the 5 most distinguished lawyers of Trinidad and Tobago in the 20th century, and many others agree.
I have heard Chief Justices and former Chief Justices say that so far as they are concerned at the bar, he has been the best lawyer that they have, you know, done a case against in their, or with in their life and practice. I've been to other islands where I do some work from time to time, and if you go to Barbados, for example, Sir Henry Ford, who is the leading lawyer there, I think, I can say without dispute or challenge, will tell you that he's never met a better lawyer than Tajmool Hosein, and as far as he's concerned, he's the best civil lawyer in the Commonwealth. He had a tremendous capacity for work, and was always thinking about the case, you know, very dedicated. Whenever we prepared a case, we would leave, you know, for home, say 7 o'clock in the evening or whatever time we leave and so on. And he typed out all his addresses to the judges for the case. And by the time I get to him, he'd say, well, we'll meet tomorrow morning, 7:30, whatever time, 8 o'clock. And by the time I get there, 7:30, 8 o'clock, says, I have a new edition. You know, he's redone the whole note already because he always thinking about it. And I certainly used to feel that when he was finished with a note for a case, his address, if a judge listened to him or took down the whole address, the judge had his decision given already, because it was always flawless, so logical, so clear, that the judge just had to borrow it if he wanted it, and there was the decision.
Today, Tajmool Hosein is still advocating for a more just society with his involvement in the Principles of Fairness project.
So I became involved in the Principles of Fairness project about 7, 8 years ago. Ken Gordon and I suggested to Ken Gordon that we might form a small group to call ourselves Principles of Fairness. And we were joined by Tiwari, Gordon and myself. And we had a number of meetings with trade unionists, businessmen. The Archbishop sent representatives, the Anglican bishop would come himself, and we used to have meetings at various places at which we decided that we will try to promote a more harmonious creation of a more harmonious society, try to eliminate racism from the society, particularly because we all know that that has been a troublesome subject, not so much now, but earlier in our development. And we worked along, and eventually we incorporated it and called it Principles of Fairness Incorporated. Then one of the things that we decided was that it was desirable for us to take part in constitutional reform. And they appointed a committee of people to prepare a new constitution, a suggested constitution to replace the existing one. And I was appointed chairman. That was the year before last, June 2005. And we began work on it in June 2005, and by about June 2006 we produced the first edition.
Tajmool Hosein has always worked for the betterment of Trinidad and Tobago. With unquestioned scholarship and unmatched experience, his legal accomplishments have acquired almost legendary status. But praise and awards are the least of his concerns, as he continues to shape and defend the legal rights most of us take for granted.
I think he's a model human being, in the sense that he's one that everybody should try to emulate. He has, as I say, his qualities, tremendous qualities. He's a very humane person, very kind, very thoughtful. As I said, that the outstanding thing, apart from his brilliance, is his humility. How a man with that kind of scholarship can be so humble. There's no arrogance in him, none whatsoever, and always willing to help and assist people. And I think we need more people like that in the world, and certainly in Trinidad and Tobago.